Greetings and welcome back to Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel. And this is going to be a fairly short episode, and I want to continue talking about stratifying seeds and working with some more difficult types of seed. But first, I have a little follow-up. If you've been following along with the channel, you'll know that earlier in the year I did a video on saving and stratifying pear seeds, where we extracted some pear seeds and I put them in the fridge. And this is what we have gotten. We have gotten extraordinarily good, not just stratification, but they started to germinate. In truth, these probably should have been planted a week or two ago. Time got away from me. So this was an extremely successful stratification, no mold, and these guys are ready to go. It's a little early to be planting right now, which is kind of unfortunate, but they need to get out. When this happens, those little roots will grow into the paper towel. So what I like to do here is just tear away all of the extra paper towel, and planting these is extremely difficult. Done. Right? The paper towel will disintegrate. The roots will grow down through just fine. We'll put a little bit of soil on top. Okay, this is very, very dry. It's going to need a good soaking. Okay, and we planted some pear trees. Yes, I know this pot is very small for that number of trees, but I will let them grow until they're yay tall. And if they get that tall halfway through the season, I'll transplant them then. If they kind of grow yay tall and just stop and harden off, I'll just winter them in this pot and then transplant them into individual pots next spring. So that is a successful stratification. The main thing, missed a little guy, tuck him in, there we go. The main thing I wanted to talk about, I also have another pot worth here, but that's, you can see it's all floofed up, so that's going to be the same as that. And I'm making a total mess with water all over the place, but that's okay. Is another way of stratifying things. Now, this is what I do with difficult to work with seed. Seed I don't want to molest too much, something I really want to keep my eye on and take care of, right? Those fruit trees are pretty hardy. As long as I don't snap off all of those little roots, they'll be totally fine, right? They're going to come up, they'll be great. I'm going to have to keep that pot in the house for a little while, but they'll be fine, it'll be good. A lot of seeds, though, are not quite that easy to work with, especially when we talk about wildflowers, a lot of perennial medicinal herbs, in working with rare species for the purpose of conservation. These things tend to not be quite as easy to work with. A lot required light to germinate. Or if the seed does not actually have a light cue, there's so little stored energy in the seed that the seedling has to have light immediately upon germination. Those are harder to work with. You can't do this method with those kind of seeds, right? You're going to lose them because usually they're very, very fine, like flecks of pepper, and they'll just stick to your paper towel. The paper towel will dry out. You need another way, and you need some humidity around the top. I'll also do this for something that I really want to keep my eye on, something that's extremely expensive, something that's tricky, and I want to have it in the house and, you know, not just in a pot outside, naturally stratifying in the fall. If I fail by one of the simple methods like this, sometimes then I'll go to this as a secondary method. And this is to take one of these little lunch trays, right? Standard packed lunch trays, clear lid, and sow my seed in this. And then I will take this lid and tuck the whole thing in the fridge. Okay? So I've got two types of seed that I'm going to be working with. One is Osha, Ligusticum porteri, and this is a traditional medicine that's it's an at-risk plant, and kind of nature's cough drop in a way. I like to chew on the roots when I have a sore throat, and holy cow, does it ever numb your throat. So this is not a super small seed, as you can see, but these are difficult to grow. It's a high value crop once they get grown. I mean, a pack of seeds is not too expensive. But it's a valuable plant, and I want to keep my eye on these. So I'm using this method for these, and I'm just going to sprinkle these on top. Okay. By the way, these come from a company called Strictly Medicinal, owned by the Czech family, and it's a great, this is not a paid endorsement, I just love the company. So I always go to this company, and if I can find what I need there, I get it there first, right? So I'm working with these now. It's actually a little late in the year to be working with them, but I needed to order my beet seed. They had the beet that I want, so I tacked on some of these other things onto the order. Very much recommend this seed company. They are good, honest people. I got my PhD with my advisor being one of the members of the family. So I know the family. They're just great folks to work with. Okay, so we'll just sprinkle these on top here. And then since these are not a need light to germinate, I'm just going to kind of scuff them in a little bit, just with my fingertips, so that we have good contact with the soil. And then I have all the information written on the lid. Mm-hmm. Label, 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 and double label. Okay? So I have the common name, I have the Latin name. If one gets rubbed off or erased, I'll still be able to identify what it is from the other. I have the date that I sowed them, March 23rd, and 60 days, which is the stratification period. Okay? So that lid will now go on these seeds. That will go into the fridge. The second I'm working with here is Sweet Cicely, Mira Soderata. Now, these are really big seeds. Right? Can you see that in the view? Right? These are huge seeds. So clearly it's not a small seed needs light to germinate, but I have had poor success with these doing this method of stratification. So I'm trying it and just kind of poking them in with my fingertip here individually. With this method, to see if it's any more successful. Broke one. Don't want to hurt my little seeds. Just kind of distribute them. Now, once they sprout, this is a very durable herb, so they won't last long in this little teeny tiny tray, but they won't have to be in this little teeny tiny tray long. Because as soon as they sprout and are handleable, I'll transplant them to a large pot and then into the garden. So this is going to be a short-term arrangement for these guys. And since, you know, again, these I'm using this method, they can just have the experience of being in soil the entire time and they're not in like a weird, stressful environment. Because I have been unsuccessful with that method in the past. So if it doesn't work one way, don't give up. Try it a different way. Okay. These have 30 days of stratification, so they will be ready to germinate end of April. And they stack nicely. Now, last thing I want to talk about here is a lot of these perennials, perennial herbs, perennial medicinal herbs, again, plants that you're growing for the purpose of conservation, for butterfly gardens, things like that. are a lot more difficult to germinate than common garden seed. And, well, not so much more difficult to germinate, but take more time. And by take more time, I mean sometimes multiple years. Okay, you have to accept that, right? So the sweet Cicely should germinate fairly quickly if they're successful. But the Osha, they can take 2 to 3 months to germinate. Okay? So if I get some sprout in here, I won't so much repot these. I will take these, and as soon as there's enough root mass that I can get my fingers underneath the soil, I will just plant these as like plant ice cubes right in the ground. Let them grow for a year or two, and then divide the patch up. Mm-hmm. That way, any latent seed that's going to take a year or two to germinate will have a year or two in actual soil, and I won't lose those seeds. But I do need a couple to work first. And this is a very difficult, this may or may not work. This is a very difficult plant to grow, especially at lower elevation like here in the New York mountains. That's a high elevation Rocky Mountain plant. Another one that I've been working with here, this is bottle gentian. This I'm growing for pollinators and because it's an uncommon plant. It's not endangered, but it's an uncommon plant. And I want to propagate it and help its populations. So this is last year's. I stratified this in the fridge, and for the recommended stratification period, brought it out, 0 germination. Okay? But they did not mold, they did not go bad, they did not rot in place. I can open up the lid, and this is one that needs light to germinate, by the way. I can open up the lid and I can still see all of my seed there, happy and moist, in perfect condition. So they may just have not had enough of the right stratification cues to be ready to go. So I left them just in here, this little tented greenhouse, moist all summer. I left them out in the weather all winter. I'm going to take them back out here as soon as I'm done with this video. And these are some rhododendrons too, same deal. And try again this year. And I will keep letting them go and keep them in this little container until I see that the seed has rotted out. But I'm not going to give up on them just because they didn't come up last year. Mm-hmm. So when you make the decision that you want to start working with some of these rarer plants, you're making the decision to commit to them, and you want to make sure that you're growing them in a way that's going to be sustainable long term so that you can give them that year. Right? I have some other seeds out in my tree nursery. We'll go look out there when it's time to repot some things for the spring. We'll go out and I'll take you out to the tree nursery and I'll show you how that all works. But I have a few pots out there with seeds that have double dormancy. So they need a warm dormancy, a cold dormancy, a warm dormancy, and then another cold dormancy. They've got to be in the pot for 2 full years before I can expect complete germination. I might get a few to break dormancy this year. Right? I might have a few come up, but probably not most, not all of them. So they'll stay, those pots are labeled for multi-year pots with the date that I started them, and I just keep them weeded, right? Keep the wildflowers from coming in. They're just out in the weather, and when they have the right number of warm and cold cycles, they'll start to grow. Some trees, basswood is really bad for this. Basswood has complex multi-dormancy, and even if you do everything right, even if you acid etch the seed coats, give them the perfect hot, cold cycle, it still takes 3 or 4 years to get complete germination of a batch of seeds, right? So they're really nasty for that. So when you start working with some of these less common plants, more difficult to process perennials, make sure you're not giving up prematurely. Yes, I know you can sow lettuce like grass, completely ignore it, it comes up in a week. That's not the way with these. So you have to wait the time. And it's not hard or complicated. I am stacking them, I am putting them in the refrigerator, I'm ignoring them. It's the patience factor that scares off a lot of people. So have patience. Don't be hasty. And yeah, Lord of the Ring reference, right? Don't be hasty, little hobbits, right? So don't be hasty, little hobbits.
Gotta get that nerd cred.
Gotta get the nerd cred in, right? So when you're working with these, it's very important that you don't call them dead prematurely. So I hope this is useful. I hope this is interesting. I'm going to get on with the rest of my planning chores for the day, and I will see you next time.